crash is under investigation. We're learning, and we've been reading, the FAA is going to be looking into this. NTSB officials, Kobe Bryant, he was just such an incredible basketball player that so many people were able to look up to throughout the years, and just so incredibly talented. And here you have this crash that happened just before 10 a.m. this morning, this Sunday morning. We're told that, with this crash that happened, you could just see from the video there, it doesn't appear that there are many structures, homes in that area. It's just kind of contained to that one spot there that you see, surrounded by the grass and the brush there. So as you can imagine, it might have been difficult for emergency crews to get to that fire, to respond to it. But again, what we do know, sadly, that Kobe Bryant, this NBA legend, this star that so many people have looked up to and has admired, was on that aircraft that has crashed and is now under investigation. Arthel?
Yeah, Christina, thank you. And I would like to know, once you hear from some people there in Los Angeles, some, just the fans, the people who held him up for all those years, I'd like to hear what they have to say. Right now, joining us on the phone is Leonard Amato. Leonard Amato is the former manager for Shaquille O'Neal. And Leonard, thank you for jumping on the call with me. And I wanted to get you on because I know you through Shaq, and of course, I just want to know what you're thinking right now.
Well, everyone is processing this, so it's really hard to express emotion. I was obviously working with Shaq at the time Kobe came to the Lakers, and they worked together to forge perhaps, the greatest duo in NBA history. But what I'm thinking is this is such a sad day because he was a global icon, and Kobe was known not only as a hero among Laker fans, for the city of Los Angeles, for the NBA in general, but also for the entire world, because the NBA and basketball is a global sport, and Kobe became a global icon. So this is a really super sad day for many, many people all over the world.
I mean, talk about a role model. Here's a young man who speaks fluent Italian, who is dedicated to being a role model, is completely okay with that, takes on that mantle, carried it high, carried it mighty. For this to happen again, I think a lot of us are at a loss for words right now. I want to know, this happened this morning, so who have you had a chance to speak to since this happened, and what are they saying?
Well, I haven't been talking to anyone in detail. I was just sort of getting all kinds of text messages from all kinds of folks, and I was just sort of processing this whole thing. But I can just remember when I first met Kobe Bryant when he was 17 years old and became a member of the Lakers, that this was an incredibly intelligent young man. I was initially...
A lot of space. So when you're ready to buy a new mattress, come try it out first at American Furniture Warehouse.
Because you're the best, and I've been chosen because I'm Batman.
No! Lego Masters. Series premiere Wednesday, February 5th on Fox. Invested in you.
When we asked Kobe to present to Shaq an award when he was being awarded, I think after the second championship, Kobe got on stage and he said, this guy is the most dominant player in the history of basketball. And Shaq turned around and said, this is the greatest player. And so they had this sort of little love fest that I was watching and just feeling so incredible about, because here were two extraordinary individuals with unique, special talents, albeit slightly different, coming together to make history and showing each other this mutual respect. And as their careers went on, that respect grew. I think they did interviews following each of their retirements where they praised each other and acknowledged each other's special qualities. So just to see those two and the way that they ultimately developed this beautiful respect for each other was a beautiful thing.
Well, that speaks to both of them because, again, we cannot at all diminish the amount of competition and competitiveness, the nature that they both possess. But they both had an intellect that did, again, transcend what you thought, what people, the typical thought that some might have of a basketball player. And I think that is why they were able to have such success.
Yeah, what was so amazing about both of them is that as they continued to grow and get older, they matured really beautifully. And, Kobe just began to, maybe the only criticism of him early on was he was too much about himself and egotistical. And you could see him then begin to just, sort of wash that away and dissipate that and become someone who is much more generous, who is much more emotionally intelligent. And you could see him as he moved into all these other business activities, reach out and touch people in ways he never did before, which combined with his incredible competitiveness and discipline and, accolades as a basketball player. And Shaq has just been beautiful in terms of his development and the way that he's evolved. And, he only wants to get involved with people or companies now that make people's lives better. And so when you see two people with extraordinary talents that are so remarkable grow and mature and become even better, it just warms your heart and makes you feel incredibly good inside.
Indeed. Couldn't have said it better about either of those men. Thank you, Leonard Armato. I'm so sorry to talk to you under these unfortunate and sad circumstances, but I do appreciate you lending the perspective that you have that no one else does. Thank you so much.
Well thank you, Ethel.
Okay.
It is an incredibly sad day with this, and he was talking about his generosity. Kobe Bryant's last tweet last night, LeBron James passed him to be third place in the all-time scoring list. And Kobe tweeted out, continuing to move the game forward, King James, much respect, my brother. Number 33644 for the number of the points. Shows you how close these fierce competitors are and what type of humanity they have. Howard Kurtz joins us now. Howard, you saw the magic of Kobe Bryant on the boards. You saw the artistry and the athleticism and the grace and the power and the ability to do what he did. Just captivated this country and really raised the game of basketball to the popularity that it is today.
That's well put, Eric. I could go on and on about Kobe Bryant's incredible athletic accomplishments, youngest player to reach 30,000 points, 5 NBA championships, 18-time All-Star. But I think also he transcended basketball and he transcended professional sports in terms of, he's one of these guys everybody knew by one name, Kobe. He had a certain charisma. He was a bigger star probably because he played in Los Angeles. And so there are lots of great athletes, but there are a few who kind of become almost like a cultural touchstone, as I believe Kobe Bryant did.
And as a cultural touchstone, in a whole other world, he was head of Granite Films. He won an Oscar last year. Talk about that, the fact that it was an animated short for children. He wanted to help. He wanted to use his fame, his fortune, his accomplishments, as you just said, to help other people.
Yeah, he was a guy who went from high school directly to the NBA. I think everybody could agree it took him a few years to fully mature. But, yeah, he was somebody who was plugged into the community. I don't know if there are any other former professional athletes who could say that they won an Oscar. But he also, felt the harsh glare of the media spotlight since he was this larger-than-life figure. As everybody recalls, it was back in 2003 when Kobe Bryant was accused of sexual assault from a woman he had visited. The charges were eventually dropped. The accuser wouldn't testify, but he did admit to, a consensual out-of-wedlock encounter. And that was a humiliating time for him. And I think a lot of athletes or even public figures would have a hard time bouncing back from that and all the criticism that he took, some of it justified. But he did bounce back. And now I think that's just, a little footnote in an otherwise illustrious and glorious career. And what a shock, not only for the sports community and those who knew him personally,
it absolutely
basketball
is.
fans or sports fans in general.
We're running up
what a shock
against
for all of us,
a hard break at the moment, our continuing coverage of Kobe Bryant's death.
basketball. And I think partly his interest in helping the next generation stemmed from his 4 daughters, from his 4 children, all of whom are still children. One of them, Capri, was born just last June, so still an infant. His other children, some of them have shown a lot of interest in basketball. Gianna, who's in high school, she's an emerging basketball star in her own right. She was recently seen at a game with her dad, learning how the sport is played. Looked like he was tutoring her in a couple of different ways, and that makes this loss all the more heartbreaking. Kobe was married to Vanessa for almost 20 years, and as I mentioned earlier, he would commute back and forth in this helicopter that he owned. One of the frightening questions right now is who else was on this helicopter when he was traveling this morning. So it would have been about 10 a.m. local time there in Southern California. It seems like he was heading north, but we don't know to where, and we don't know who was with him.
Hey, so Brian, on that, that he would customarily travel, in his own chopper there, is it your understanding that he would also pilot it, or he had another pilot? He had a pilot and he as a passenger?
Yeah, my best understanding is that he had a pilot that would be taking him to and from. Back when he was playing for the Lakers, he said that the helicopter helped him stay in great form. Otherwise he'd have to take a 2-hour-long drive, and his body would get all tight before the games. So he viewed it as a tool for his performance playing for the Lakers. We don't know anything more, as was mentioned about this helicopter and who else was on board. That we'll have to wait and see.
Okay, Brian, hold it right there. Our Nick Watt is there in the area of Calabasas where, again, we are still seeing smoldering, debris near where that chopper went down. Nick, what are you learning?
Well, so far authorities are pretty tight-lipped as to what might have been the cause of this accident. They say they are very early in the investigation, but they did get reports from people who were cycling in the area that a helicopter was in distress. And Greg, if you can push in, you can see where that helicopter hit the side of that hill. We are just slightly inland from Malibu in Calabasas. You can see the smoke there. We're told that the impact did ignite a small brush fire in the area, but we expect within the next few hours to get more details of exactly why this happened. Now, visibility is a possibility. That was a question that was raised. Authorities again saying too early to tell, but as you can see, it's not a clear blue day here in Southern California today, but there was no rain. It is, though, not fantastic visibility. We hope to hear more. And listen, the other thing that's happening right now is the reaction to this. Kobe Bryant in Los Angeles was perhaps the archetypal athlete and superstar. He transcended his sport. He was of this city. And the reaction so far has been a loss for words, really. I mean, around here we've seen people shedding tears, people just looking up at the crash site, not really talking. And, I was listening to KNX radio on the way over here, and one local sportscaster said, this is one of those moments like, where were you when JFK died? This is one of those moments. Where were you when you heard about Kobe? We're also getting some reaction online from Scottie Pippen. I'm stunned. Words can't even come close to describing it. Paul Pierce, this is not real right now. JJ Watt, can't be true. Kevin Love, please no, please God no. So this city, which was Kobe Bryant's home, he played here for 20 years, he was of Los Angeles, real shock right now. But so far, not that many answers as to why and how this happened. Back to you.
Oh my gosh, yeah, this feeling of disbelief. I think everyone is feeling it. It's just, I know, people are hearing it for the first time, and it has been confirmed by authorities, but it's still so hard to believe. This young man, 41-year-old, who made such an impact on the NBA, such a huge impact on the LA Lakers, on the city of Los Angeles, as you said, Nick, sending, sports. Being a part of that community there. I hope that you do get an opportunity to talk to a number of those people who have come out that we just saw, the camera pan over, how many people have come out who are fans, who are shedding tears. Now, earlier we heard from officials, they said still unclear the origin of the chopper flight, its destination, that yes, there was some fog, but unclear whether visibility was indeed, a factor. Have authorities taken this investigation any further to say they have gleaned anything with any certainty from the crash site thus far?
They have not. I mean, the FAA has come out to confirm the type of helicopter, and that is pretty much it. So far from authorities, all we've really been hearing about is their emergency response to this event and the fact that this brush fire was sparked. We are expecting to hear from authorities again within a couple of hours. But listen, the how and the why is really secondary here. The headline is what has happened, that Kobe Bryant, this great of the game, this great of American culture, this great of Los Angeles, has perished on this hillside here in Calabasas.
All right. Nick Watt, thank you so much. Keep us posted. Again, tragic news. The world has lost a great NBA great, Kobe Bryant, among 5 who perished in this helicopter crash there in Southern California. We'll have more right after this.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Welcome back. I'm Frederica Whitfield in Washington, D.C. A terribly sad news to report to you. 41-year-old Kobe Bryant has been killed in a helicopter crash in Southern California. 4 others on that helicopter also died in this crash just outside of Malibu. Most recently, CNN had a chance to sit down and talk with Kobe Bryant. It was with Andy Scholes in sports, and he was in Los Angeles just 11 days ago at a season launch event for Major League Soccer. Let's listen in to that interview.
You were one of the early investors into Body Armor. It's grown so much over the years. How cool is it now to be a partner with Major League Soccer?
You know, it's crazy, man, because like when we first started the company, it was such a small company. And we had this vision of doing these big things and servicing the athletes and educating them on nutrition and hydration. And to find ourselves here now in partnership with MLS, and MLS is, I mean, they've taken off too. I mean, this is coming up on 25 years now. And the game has done nothing but grow, and so to have this relationship together is, we look forward to doing some big things.
I know you're a big Barcelona fan. How do you think they're going to fare, and where do you think Messi ranks in terms of best athletes in the world right now?
Well, I think he's one of the best athletes of all time. His tenacity, the intelligence with which he plays, as well as the skill, just puts him head and shoulders above the rest. Now Cristiano is right there with him. But I think Barcelona right now, going through their transition period, changing manager, there's a lot of questions to be answered, but I think they'll figure it out.
The NBA fans love to debate, which team from which era was better. Shaq recently weighed in saying that he absolutely thinks you and him would have beaten this current Lakers team with LeBron and Anthony Davis. What's your take on that hypothetical matchup?
I don't weigh in on hypotheticals. Because as a competitor, there's nothing you can do about them. You can't debate yourself to winning something, right? That was the beauty about sports, is you compete, you either win or you lose. In the debate culture, there's never a clear winner, right. But it's fun to hear.
You recently said your daughter Gigi got you back into watching a lot of NBA. You've taken her to a bunch of games this year, sitting courtside with her. As you watch games with her and coach her through her basketball journey, I wanted to get your take on if you think a woman could ever play in the NBA one day.
Play in the NBA? I think there are a couple players that can play in the NBA right now, honestly. I mean, there's a lot of players that have a lot of skill that can do it. Diana Taurasi, Maya Moore, Ella Deladon. I mean, there's a lot of great players out there, so they could most certainly keep up with me.
All right, an interview with our Andy Scholes just 11 days ago of NBA star Kobe Bryant. Of course, this news hitting everyone hard, that Kobe Bryant was among 5 in a helicopter that went down in Calabasas, California, just outside of Malibu earlier today. This 5-time NBA champion, 2-time MVP player. He was an NBA player. He was a mentor, a real leader, involved in books, movies, television productions, already very much sorely missed. It has also been reported by officials there that Kobe Bryant and 4 others were on a Sikorsky S-76 helicopter. We heard from our Brian Stelter earlier that this is indeed the helicopter that Kobe Bryant customarily would travel in the Los Angeles County, even when he was a player, would arrive at the NBA games at the Staples Center in his own helicopter. He found it to be the more relaxing route prior to a game. We want to find out more now about this type of helicopter, this Sikorsky S-76. Joining me right now, Jacob Benkovsky, a helicopter pilot. He flies this type of aircraft, a Sikorsky S-76, the same chopper that Kobe Bryant was in. And so I'm wondering if you can tell me, as you look at this debris field, if you have an opportunity to see a monitor right now and see, we're looking at what appears to be a portion of the tail and the scattering of debris in at least this image here, and the decimation of a lot of other debris. What are you seeing in this? What are you reading from this?
So based on the images, I can't confirm whether or not this was mechanical error or weather-related error, but based on some of the reports that we're getting, it seems like the weather was foggy. It seems like the weather conditions were not ideal for helicopter flight, and leaning a lot more towards a weather-related incident.
What do you know about this aircraft? How many persons can it hold? Is this one customarily used for, short distances, long distances? What can you tell me?
So the F-76 is similar to the helicopter I have experience with, which is the S-70. This helicopter usually carries a crew of 13. It could be customized to carry as many, much less than that if certain features are added. This is probably one of the most reliable helicopters out there. It is a very good helicopter. Having said that, when weather is involved, everything goes out the window, and there's no predictability on whether or not a safe flight can be had.
And that is just the case for any helicopter or aircraft, or are you saying that is a particular thing to keep in mind with this type of helicopter?
No, it is definitely an issue with any type of aircraft whatsoever, plane, helicopter, anything that's in the air. Once weather, especially visibility, which seems to be the most commonly reported cause for this accident as of right now, when visibility is decreased, what happens is pilots usually enter something called IFR mode, which is Instrument Flight Rules mode, which happens when IMC happens, Instrument Meteorological Conditions. That is basically a mode where you see nothing outside and you have to rely on the instruments in the helicopter. Imagine this as driving on the road, and everything outside becomes dark, and you have to rely only on your GPS and your speedometer. When you're flying in this type of mode, it's a lot more difficult than flying outside and seeing everything around you, because you have to rely on maps, you have to rely on altimeters, which tell you the altitude, and there are certain obstacles that are harder to avoid because you cannot see outside. Having said that, this is probably one of the most common modes that aviation accidents occur in.
All right, Jacob, Ben Kopsky, thank you so much. I want to bring in Mary Schiavo, CNN transportation analyst and former inspector general for the Department of Transportation. As you look at this debris field and you see what appear to be at least a couple of very large chunks of the aircraft, at least I'm seeing from my naked eye, two very large chunks, and then you see a very scattered debris field. How do you examine this from afar? What do you see from this image?
Well, from this image, I do what I always do, is go back to the flight radar first of all, and then consider other crashes that I've worked on. And the flight radar gives us a tremendous amount of evidence. This plane was over downtown Los Angeles, and for those of us who have lived in LA, a highly populated area. It was at an altitude of around 2,300 feet, made several circles around downtown, kind of just north of very populated Los Angeles. And then it headed out to Calabasas as it was losing altitude, which suggests to me, and Calabasas is not very populated. There are a lot of parks there, walking trails, mountains, etc. It almost looks to me, now this is a big guess, but because it circled many times, a tight circle over downtown LA and started losing altitude, I think this plane got in mechanical problems over downtown LA, and the pilot was trying to find a place to put it down or to save an awful lot of lives.
And so, Mary, you know this, or you've surmised this because you have had access to the flight pattern. You're able to see. Tell me what you were able to look at, and why that's incremental as you look at investigations all the time. Why you look at the origin of its takeoff and the pattern to discern what possibly could have happened.
Well, when you're looking to discern between a weather problem or a mechanical problem, if you have to look at what the plane itself was doing. And when the plane is making a lot of tight circles where it was intended to head, and then it heads out over an unpopulated area, sometimes, for example, I worked several crashes where the pilots tried to go to areas that weren't so populated if they thought they could get the aircraft down, or they were concerned that they were getting into a situation where they couldn't control the plane. And so that gives us clues. And I looked at flight radar, I looked at the altitude, I looked at the path of the plane, and I looked at these circles. And people might be able to get an idea of what this helicopter is like by telling them that it's similar to the Black Hawk. The Black Hawk helicopter that's used worldwide by military operations everywhere. It's a pretty heavy-duty aircraft. Yes, it has had, crashes in the past, of course, but they've been widely variant on the causes, and many of them were modified, including top secret modifications by the United States military. This plane is, of course, not, or aircraft is not among them, but it is along the line of a Black Hawk helicopter.
Hey, so Mary, perhaps you were listening to my conversation with Jacob Binkowski, who's also a pilot who's familiar with, flying this kind of Sikorsky chopper, and he talked about, the weather and fog. Now talk to me about, fog is measured differently for an aircraft versus a helicopter. Helicopter, you can fly lower for a longer period of time, but talk to me about the calculus for a pilot of a helicopter to determine whether it's too foggy, it's just foggy enough, the potential perils or dangers that may be associated with fog for a helicopter versus an airplane.
Well, a helicopter, particularly operating over Los Angeles, you have to have enough space. You have to be able to see all the buildings. Obviously, there are tremendous navigation programs where you don't have to rely on the look out the window and see method, if you will, visual flight rules, VFR. But here, of course, it depends what the fog layer was over Los Angeles. So it's possible they were circling these very tight circles over just north of downtown LA to where they were going to land, and they could not do it because of the fog. But in this case, looking at the wreckage, it does not look like what we had, what's called a CFIT, a controlled flight into terrain, where you can't see because of the fog and you hit an obstacle, you hit a mountain, you hit a hill, you hit a TV tower. It does not look like a CFIT accident. It looks to me like the helicopter was in trouble and went down because it was losing altitude.
All right, transportation analyst Mary Schiavo, thank you so much. As we hear from the experts on, studying a crash site, and we're looking at the smoldering debris from this helicopter that crashed into this hillside in Calabasas, California. We cannot forget that among those on board, 5 people killed in this helicopter crash, among them NBA legend Kobe Bryant at the age of 41. Back with me now, Don Riddell, Christine Brennan, Brian Stelter. And, Don, we heard, from our Nick Watt earlier. He read the tweets coming from people from Scottie Pippen to J.J. Watt, NBA to the NFL. And, there are people who have gathered who are fans of Kobe Bryant, everyone being hit hard, everyone feeling like disbelief. This cannot be. Talk to me about the reaction that you've seen from the sports world and beyond.
Yeah, Frederica, I think you can probably relate to this. Our timelines on our social media feeds these days are just consumed with what's going on in Washington, D.C. and the political situation in this country. My timeline is just consumed now with news and reaction to Kobe Bryant. As we've been saying over the last half hour or so here on CNN, just a complete state of shock. So many people just do not want to believe it. Of course, we're getting reaction from the basketball world, the American sports world, but the international sports world too. We've had reaction from the soccer clubs in Europe, Paris Saint-Germain and AC Milan. Reaction from the world of tennis. Of course, the Australian Open is happening in Melbourne right now. They're just getting to start play in the second week down under in Australia today. Interestingly enough, not that long ago, one of the world's top tennis players, Novak Djokovic, was describing how he feels about Kobe Bryant. This, of course, before we knew the news today, but Djokovic saying he considers Kobe Bryant to be a mentor. Djokovic, at various stages in his career, has struggled with injury and the mental problems that come with the pain and the anguish and the uncertainty of an injury. And he said that he had several conversations with Kobe Bryant, and he basically said, I love Kobe. Who doesn't? He's just an amazing guy and one of the best. And this is how so many basketball players, basketball fans, other athletes and other fans all around the world feel about Kobe Bryant. When he played the last of those 20 seasons for the LA Lakers in 2015-16, he knew that this was kind of going to be a farewell tour for him, visiting all the cities around the NBA teams in the country, and he did not want a fuss to be made. These are places that historically would have booed him, not because he was a bad player. They booed him because he was a great player and he was coming into town to mess with their team. And he said, I don't want a fuss. But it didn't really matter what he thought, because the league just felt compelled to honour him every single night with video reels, all the rest of it. And just last night we had LeBron James talking about him after he passed his record. We can talk about that later in the day. Back to you, Frederica.
And that is bittersweet. And, Christine, we got about 15 seconds left. no one wants to put it this way, 41 years old, but what's his legacy?
Well, the legacy is a great basketball player and then moving on into our culture in a huge way. And because of the way his life has now been lost, you think of athletes cut their lives cut short. Newt Rockne, a coach, and of course Payne Stewart. That adds to the legacy
leave it right
in the
there.
works of Payne.
Thank you so much, Christine Brennan, Brian Stelter, Don Riddell. I'm Frederica Whitfield. Our hearts go out to Kobe Bryant's family, his wife Vanessa, 4 children, as we all try to digest this very terribly sad news, the loss of a great one.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Hello, I'm Ana Cabrera in New York. You are live in the CNN newsroom. We begin with this tragic breaking news. One of the greatest basketball players of all time is dead. Sources confirming to CNN Kobe Bryant, the 5-time NBA champion and 18-time All-Star, has been killed along with 4 other people in a helicopter crash in Calabasas, California. He was just 41 years old. The details are still coming in. A firefighter says there was some fog this morning. We do not know yet if that contributed to the crash in the hills above Calabasas, which is just outside Los Angeles. We have team coverage with us. We have Nick Watt joining us from the scene of the crash. What more do you know, Nick?
Well, Anna, we are still waiting for any official word from authorities as to what might have caused this crash. We have heard from the local fire department that they were on scene because the impact of this crash ignited a small brush fire there on the hills there between Calabasas and Malibu, which is just over those hills. Now, we will hopefully get some indication of why this happened. But I mean, this morning I have spoken to a fixed-wing pilot who said he did not fly this morning because of the visibility. That has not been confirmed in any way as a contributing factor in this accident right now. We just want to be clear on that. Now, where was Kobe Bryant going? Well, I have heard from the director of a girls basketball team here that he was expected at a tournament at the Mamba Academy in Thousand Oaks at noon. He was coaching a team on which one of his daughters played, but we have not had that independently confirmed or confirmed by another source yet. But what is happening right here, Anna, is just absolute shock and speechlessness in Los Angeles. I'm crowded round here, hundreds of people gathering, just looking, just wondering, just trying to let this news sink in. He, of course, played 20 years here in Los Angeles. He was a main part of a number of championship seasons. But for Los Angeles and for America and, frankly, for the world, Kobe Bryant was more than just a basketball player. He transcended his sport, which is a cliche, but he's a man who really did that. And we can see that from the reaction of everyday folks here in Los Angeles, people crying, and also the reaction from celebrities from the world of sport and entertainment. Just utter shock that Kobe Bryant, 41 years old, has died. Anna?
And Nick, we're looking at some of the aerial images of the accident scene where the crash, of course, happened, and it's still smoldering. What more do you know about the area?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so this is, we're in Calabasas, so just sort of northwestish of Los Angeles. Those hills there, fairly large hills between Calabasas and Malibu and the Pacific Ocean. So, you know, listen, there is a possibility that the topography played a part in this accident. You can see those hills rise pretty sharply from behind Calabasas. And, you know, as I mentioned before, the impact of this crash sparked a brush fire that authorities had to fight to put out. As you can see, perhaps on those pictures, first responders are still up there, but the investigation has really yet to gain any impetus. We are not getting much information whatsoever from authorities beyond the make of the helicopter, the time, and the impact. We are not getting any official indication yet as to what might have caused this, but we are expecting a press conference within a couple of hours and hopefully some answers. But as I say, Anna, right now here it is just shock. People aren't really asking why this happened. They are just shocked that it happened. These people have lost one of Los Angeles, one of the towering figures of this city who was involved in promoting women's sport. As I mentioned, I've been speaking to the director of a girls basketball team who said that he was a colossus. He was somebody who didn't just push boys' sports, he pushed girls' sports. He was an LA figure who, as they say around here, it will be very, very difficult to replace.
Yeah, for that community, obviously, it's such a personal hit that they're taking, given his connection to Los Angeles and California. But I mean, he was a global sports figure. He spent a lot of time living in Italy when his father was playing professional basketball. We know he has work that he's doing in China, helping to educate some of the folks there as part of his philanthropy work. That is life after basketball. And Brian, let me turn to Brian Stelter, who's here with me too. His legacy in basketball is well known. Of course, he had a lot of firsts. He's still on a lot of all-time greatest lists, obviously, but he had an impact off the hardwood as well.
Yeah, he was a hardwood genius, but his cultural impact was also almost unparalleled, partly by bringing new fans into basketball, but partly by using people's love of his performance to introduce them to other products, to a film that he made, et cetera, et cetera. You know, a writer once said that Kobe looked like an ad for a product called Swagger. And that is so true. It's one of the reasons why people, even casual fans, were so interested, wanting to watch what he was going to do next on the court and also off the court. And the LA mayor, Eric Garcetti, just put out a statement about this, calling Kobe a giant who inspired, amazed, and thrilled people everywhere with his skill on the court, and awed us with his intellect and humility as a father and husband. And to what Nick Watt just said, Kobe was teaching one of his girls basketball, one of his teenage daughters basketball recently. recently a video went viral on social media of Kobe showing her some of the tricks of the trade at a basketball game. And so I think people right now are fearing for the family, hoping that everyone in the family is alive and well. Certainly not well, but alive. We know that Kobe's wife Vanessa was not on board the helicopter. This is a chopper that Kobe would take all the time. This was his personal helicopter. He would take it to and from games when he was playing downtown in LA and then back home, and would still use it regularly. But basketball was in his DNA. He started playing when he was 3 years old. He wrote in his book a couple of years ago, I remember when I first got my first real basketball. He said, I loved the feel of it in my hands. I was so enamored with the ball, I didn't even want to bounce it or use it because I didn't want to ruin the pebbled leather grains or the perfect grooves. I didn't want to ruin the feel. He said, I loved the sound of it too, the tap, tap, tap of when a ball bounces on the hardwood, the crispness and clarity. Those are the elements I loved about the ball, about the game. They're the reasons I dug as deep as I dug. It all came down to that special tap, tap, tap that I first grew infatuated with as a boy. Wow. There are millions of boys, millions of adults out there who wanted to be like Kobe Bryant, who wanted to be the best the way Kobe was. And I think to hear him describe that as a boy, there's kids out there right now that want to be Kobe Bryant someday.
And it really transcends sports. It transcends basketball. Like you said, just having somebody who works so hard at something they love so much reach the pinnacle of success as an inspiration to so many people who are in love with whatever it is their passion is, not just in the sports world. But let's talk more about what he accomplished in his career. Anchor of CNN World Sports, Don Riddell, is with us. Break down more of his impact to the sporting world, Don.
Well, I mean, we're saying a lot today. It's kind of hard to find the words. It is extraordinary what he achieved during a 20-year career with the LA Lakers in the NBA. He only ever played for one team. He was drafted by another team, but he made his way to the Lakers before the season began, and there he made his name, and he made the LA Lakers a global brand as well. And this all happened at the time that the NBA was becoming truly international, and Kobe Bryant was right there, right in the thick of it. He won 5 NBA titles with the Lakers, including the famous three-peat from the years 2000 to 2002. He was the Finals MVP twice. He was the most valuable player in the NBA as well in the year 2008. He won 2 gold medals with the US team at the Olympics. And it was just his work ethic that I think made him so admired. I printed off a list of some of his most famous quotes before I came here into the studio. And so many of them talk about that, the work ethic, just his drive not to be beaten, never to be second best, always wanting to put the work in and come out on top. He had one quote where he said, "My brain, it cannot process failure. I will not process failure because if I sit there and have to face myself and tell myself you're a failure, I think that's almost worse than death." That's one of his better known quotes and quite poignant today. The reason we're all talking about him today is because of his phenomenal career and everything he achieved, not just in the United States, not just with the Lakers and the NBA, but globally he was an icon. And he was a world figure too. I mean, remember that he went to live in Italy. He really grew up in Italy when his father moved there. He grew up there from the ages of 6 to 13. He became fluent in Italian. He's a huge fan of the Italian soccer team AC Milan, who have today posted their regret the news of his sudden passing. And just admired by so many people all over the world. So many athletes too, not just basketball players. So many athletes in so many different sports are really in a great state of shock today. And just finally from me, Anna, how many people do you know who are only known by one name? It's a very, very short list. I'd say Tiger, Venus, Serena, Kobe. There's not many of them. But Kobe Bryant absolutely transcended his sport and became known all over the world just by one name.
A legend who is no longer with us today, 41 years old. Everybody, please stand by. We are waiting for a press conference to begin from Lower Merion High School in Philadelphia. That is where Kobe Bryant went to high school. You can see them setting up the cameras there. The gymnasium there is named after this NBA star. And we're going to be speaking with one of his friends who went to high school there, who played basketball with him at that stage in his career as it launched him into stardom. When we come back, stay with us. Okay. Reaction pouring in on Twitter to the news of Kobe Bryant's death. NBA star Scottie Pippen tweeting, "I am stunned. Words can't even come close to describing it. Just an incredibly sad and tragic day. The owner of the Dallas Mavericks, Mark Cuban, saying we can never forget how precious life is, how those who are special to you, and never let them forget how deeply you love them. Patriots quarterback Tom Brady tweeting, "We miss you already, Kobe." Former Boston Celtics star Paul Pierce with 6 words, "This is not real right now." NBA star Dwayne Wade capturing the shock from this news, tweeting, "No, God, please, no." Just moments ago, a press conference was being held at Lower Merion High School. This is just outside Philadelphia. It's where Kobe Bryant went to school. The gymnasium there bears his name. Let's listen.
My name is Amy Buckman. I'm the Director of School and Community Relations for the Lower Merion School District, and obviously this is a difficult day for everyone in our school community. I've spoken to Coach Downer. He is not up to speaking to the media at this time, and I hope that you will respect his privacy. What I'm going to do is read a statement at this time on behalf of the school district. We do not have any information about the crash. All that information would have to come from authorities in California. But the following is what I can say on behalf of the school district. The Lower Merion School District community is deeply saddened to learn of the sudden passing of one of our most illustrious alumni, Kobe Bryant. Mr. Bryant's connection to Lower Merion High School, where he played basketball prior to joining the NBA, has raised the profile of our high school and our district throughout the world. Our school community will always be grateful for his ongoing generosity to his alma mater, including his dedication of our Kobe Bryant Gymnasium and his support of our girls and boys basketball teams. Greg Downer coached Mr. Bryant from 1992 to 1996. In that time, Mr. Bryant led his team to the 1996 state championship. Mr. Downer said that he is completely shocked and devastated today upon hearing the news, adding that Aces Nation has lost its heartbeat. The entire Lower Merion School District community sends its deepest condolences to the entire Bryant family. Our basketball teams will no doubt pay tribute to Mr. Bryant as our season continues. But at this time, as a district, we will concentrate on supporting those in our community, including Coach Downer and English teacher Jean Mastriano, who Mr. Bryant credited for sparking his love of writing. Thank you for being here.
Amy, are you taking questions?
I don't have a lot of information I can add.
Just based off of how did the district learn about this? And can you give us a sort of a feeling from the upper levels of the administration?
We heard about it on the news. I guess like most people did this afternoon. So obviously it was very sudden.
And we stand in front of the gymnasium that bears his name.
Right. This is our Kobe Bryant Gymnasium. This is where our Lower Merion Aces play their basketball games and where our kids have gym class every day.
What's the school schedule going forward? Obviously, this is going to generate quite a bit of attention.
We're still meeting as a district administration. We'll be consulting with the principal, our guidance counselors, and staff to try to decide what, if anything. I'm sure we'll be doing some things to support our students and our staff in the coming days, but we haven't made those decisions yet.
What was your personal interaction with Mr. Bryant ever?
I never met him, so I'm a Lower Merion alumna myself, but I predate Mr. Bryant's arrival here, and then I joined the district long after he had graduated.
Amy, already a memorial is at the door behind us. From your involvement in this community, being from here, on a personal level, and how important is this, Mr. Bryant, to this community?
Mr. Bryant is the person most identified with Lower Merion High School and Lower Merion School District throughout the world. I know my own children have been traveling in foreign countries wearing their Lower Merion High School t-shirts or jackets, and people all over the world have walked up to them and said, "Lower Merion, Kobe Bryant." I mean, he is how we are identified around the world, so this is a difficult time for our community.
When's the last time he was here at the school?
I'd have to look that up. I don't know. Okay. If members of the news media want to come in the gym, we have some murals on the walls. We have a display case with some memorabilia of Mr. Bryant's. So fortunately, we can't have the public coming in at this time, so just the media, if you can follow me in. Thank you.
Amy, is there any way, can we just get this phone?
Repeat it again? I mean, I can give you a printed version. You missed me. All right, we'll do it again.
Amy, the stuff that was stolen that year that was been replaced?
The jersey has been returned. to the district. Okay.
Okay, again, we were just listening in there to a press conference at Kobe Bryant's former high school. That is in Lower Merion outside Philadelphia. And I want to bring in somebody who went to that high school with Kobe Bryant. David Lasman is joining us on the phone right now. David, first and foremost, my condolences to you. I know you were friends with Bryant. The two of you both played basketball together there in high school. What's your reaction to learning of his death?
Yeah, I'm obviously really shocked and saddened by his death, and I mean it's kind of surreal in this moment, but it's just a time of reflection and thinking about the different times that we had and playing basketball, growing up together, and just everything that he's done for me, and I'm very appreciative.
What did he mean to you personally?
Well, obviously we grew up together, played basketball together, won a state championship together, and then from then on, he wanted to come out with a rap album, and he asked one of the guys from our high school to create the music for the album. He asked me to write the treatment for the music video, which is something I wanted to do at the time, and I ended up moving out to LA and having a career in music, and I just feel like it changed the course of my life. Like everybody talks about, his crazy work ethic and different friendships, but I feel like a lot of things were misunderstood about him, and he really, a lot of his friends from like growing up in high school really have great things to say about him, and that's why I wanted to take the opportunity to be on this and just share some of those memories as well.
What was it like to play with him in high school?
I mean, I was like a high school kid, so I didn't really know like this was going to be Kobe Bryant. Like I didn't know he was going to be one of the best players of all time. Obviously, he was very intense, and his work ethic was incredible, and his belief in himself. I remember in 8th grade, he said, I'm going to start as a freshman next year in high school. And nobody starts as a freshman in high school. And I was like, I didn't think that he was going to do it. And then I remember in a senior in high school, he's like, telling me that Michael Jordan can't stop him. He's like, I'm not saying that, I can stop Michael Jordan, but he can't stop me. And that's coming from like a kid in high school. And obviously at the time I thought he was crazy, but it was, the belief in himself obviously says a lot, and it taught me a lot, and something that I'll remember forever.
Yeah, you say he was always looking for a challenge and ready to rise up. What else can you tell us about Kobe Bryant, the person? You said you have a lot of memories.
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously his work ethic was incredible. I remember when, I was producing television shows, and I called him up and asked him about leadership and asked him, what if he had read any books, and he said that he just observed nature, and I thought about that for a minute, and obviously he was a lion, and that's who he was, and I feel like he was very introspective, very he's very interesting and very put a lot of thought into everything he's doing, which obviously included basketball.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you talk about his love of sort of the arts, especially considering, I feel like so often in our society we sort of, think of people as being either an athlete or into, some kind of creative passion, and yet it sounds like he was somebody who had both and was talented in both areas.
Yeah, he approached things differently, and he's very smart about the way he approached things. It's funny, after he retired, I thought, oh, maybe he'll, chill out and I'll hang out with him more and stuff. And then, then he was just on to the next thing. He wanted to, build a studio like Disney, and, was just so focused on that. And, it's just one of the things, obviously, that he's known for is that intense work ethic.
He was quoted in a USA Today article as saying, Lower Merion High School and everything associated with it made me who I am. What do you think he meant by that, as somebody who went to that same high school?
I think, I think the people in Philadelphia are really grounded, blue-collar type people. I think work ethic is really important. I think, I know when he came over from Italy, he said that all the kids in Italy thought he had no chance in the NBA, making it to the NBA. And I think even Lower Merion's a suburb, and so when we would play the inner city teams, people would automatically think that the inner city kids are better, and I think it just gave him this intense drive to prove people wrong, and I think that's probably part of what he meant.
It's interesting that he, again, was living in Italy for much of his childhood and then came to the United States during a time that, is a very vulnerable time in many of our lives as teenagers. And he didn't obviously have the time to develop and cultivate deep friendships as he was working his way through those school years in the U.S. Was he somebody who was quick to make friends? What was your perception of that and his ability to connect with people?
I think he did. Obviously, I think, he has a side of him that's a loner, but I think he did make a lot of good friendships. And I think that part's maybe a little misunderstood. And I think that a lot of the kids from high school would consider him, a good friend. And I think that, I watched that documentary, The Muse, and he said, when I decided I wanted to be the best player of all time, I realized I had to cut out certain things in my life, friends and different things. And I think, obviously, becoming the greatest or one of the greatest of all time, was extremely important to him. And so then I understood, okay, maybe, that's why I might not get a text back or a call back or, or who, you know what I mean? Because he's so focused. But I think, I don't think any of us really took it personal. We just realized that was the mission that he was on. But if I ever saw him, he'd ask about my family, he'd ask about my sister, just ask how I'm doing. And I don't think it really took away from kind of him actually caring about the people that he grew up with.
Yeah, I'm as guilty as anybody about not keeping in touch with people, old friends. Have you kept in touch with Kobe Bryant over the years?
I did when he first moved out, obviously, because we were, I came out to work on that, and then I actually played against him since after he was in the NBA, and he was a million times better than he was when I played against him in high school, and then I caught out with him randomly, and then we exchanged phone numbers, maybe a couple years later, 3-4 years later, and then I kept in touch with him for a while, and then we just lost touch.
Yeah.
So it's been probably about 5-6 years since I talked to him.
Well, David Lasman, thank you so much for taking the time to share your memories and what you know of Kobe Bryant as we all are, grappling with this tragic news and his death. Thank you again for being here. And as we go to break, we want to show a moment of silence held in Bryant's honor. This was at the Denver Nuggets game.
Ladies and gentlemen, basketball fans, a tragedy has befallen the world of basketball. Earlier today, at the age of 41, Kobe Bryant was killed in a helicopter crash. In 20 seasons with the Lakers, Kobe was a 17-time All-Star, 2-time NBA Finals MVP, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, and 5-time NBA champion. The NBA and the game of basketball will mourn this loss together. Please join us in a moment of silence for Kobe Bryant. Rest in peace, Mamba. Ladies and gentlemen,
Out here and you see this outpouring for him, what does that mean as a fan to see so many?
Obviously having some trouble there with the video, but we're hearing from people all around the world today reacting to the news that Kobe Bryant is now dead at age 41, killed in a helicopter crash this morning or this afternoon in California. And now we can also report, a source telling CNN, that Kobe Bryant's 13-year-old daughter was also on board that helicopter. I want to bring back CNN's Brian Stelter with more information. So he's a father of four.
A father of four daughters. One of his children was born just last June. Gianna, Gigi for short, was 13 years old, one of the middle children in the family. She was born in 2006. CNN's Chloe Molas has confirmed that she was on board the helicopter and she did die in the crash. So Kobe was taking Gianna to a basketball game, to a basketball tournament. Apparently there in Calabasas. Some of the players who were already there, they've taken to their knees and they've been praying on the court. Gigi, as I mentioned, was 13 years old. She was an emerging basketball star in her own right. She picked up the love of the game from her dad. She inherited some of her dad's talent. And for Kobe, this was a thrill because he started to see the game through Gigi's eyes. He said that when he was there in 2017 for his jersey retirement celebration, that was the first time that he was able to see Gianna look at the game and see that excitement in her eyes. It was the first time he saw the game through her eyes. And then in a more recent interview, he said, you know, when I retired in 2016, I stopped watching basketball every night, but then Gianna really wanted to watch. And now every night we're on the couch, we're watching the game. He said in a recent podcast interview, I mean every game. She asked for NBA League Pass so we could watch every game. She watches everything. So it's beyond tragic to think about a parent taking his daughter, thinking about her career, her future in the basketball world. In fact, Kobe had said that she really wanted to play for the UConn Huskies someday, that she was already thinking about college, thinking about where she could play someday. And we now know that they both died today, both heading to her basketball game.
She's the oldest of four girls, the youngest, as you mentioned, being just born this past summer in June of 2019.
Yeah, 2019. It makes me think about,
it's really awful.
My dad died when I was a teenager, and he died. He collapsed when he was coaching my brother's basketball game. And I always took a measure of joy from knowing that he was doing something he loved. And I hope that for the family right now, at least they know that Kobe was traveling with his daughter, taking her somewhere she loved, teaching her the rhythms of the game as only he could. It's an incredible thing, but a heartbreaking thing for this family to lose one of their four daughters.
Yeah.
As we've been mentioning, Kobe's wife, Vanessa, they've been together almost 20 years, and we believe that Gianna was the only child on board. We don't know the other three victims of this crash, but apparently there was a pilot on board. We don't know the other identities. And
I misspoke because Gianna was 13 and he also has a 16-year-old daughter, Natalia, and then a 3-year-old and then a newborn. Gosh, your heart just really goes out to his family today, that's for sure. Let me turn to Peter Goals as we now focus on the investigation and what happened here. He's our aviation analyst and a former managing director at the NTSB. Peter, it is just a few hours since this crash happened, killing everyone on board, 5 people total, Bryant and 4 others on the chopper, Bryant and his daughter. We see some first responders on the scene as we have been looking at those aerial pictures, but where do the investigators begin with a crash site like this?
Well, I mean, this is just a terrible tragedy. The investigators will be leaving Washington, early this evening to go directly to Los Angeles. They may send out investigators from the West Coast. There'll be a full team, including, I understand, NTSB member Jennifer Hamady will be on scene. So the NTSB is going to treat this as a major investigation. The Sikorsky S-76 was a monster of a helicopter. There's over 1,000 of them in service. This one was designed for executive travel, with 4 passenger seats. It had twin turbo engines. It had the best avionics. It quite likely had data recorders, which will help the investigators. But key, they will stake out the accident scene and try and figure out from the radar track, from any communications the pilot had with the ground, and from the wreckage, what happened. And it was mentioned earlier, helicopter crashes tend to be very devastating in terms of the wreckage, and it's oftentimes very difficult to figure out if there was a mechanical fault or not. But in this case, they may be lucky. There may be data recorders. There may be a voice recorder.
I mean, again, all we're really going off of are the pictures that we can see. Do these images of the wreckage provide any initial clues?
No, I mean, I think you need to be concerned about the weather as well. You know, some initial reports said it was extremely foggy there in the early morning. I don't know. I haven't seen the latest reports on that, but it's you know, weather often plays havoc in helicopter accidents like this, and I hope that's not the case. But you got to look to weather.
Given just how high profile Kobe Bryant is, how much pressure is there now for investigators to get answers quickly?
Well, they're not going to rush. Investigators, the NTSB in particular, want to get it right, and they've got the expertise. They've got enough people assigned to it to get it right. You'll hear from them for the next couple of days on scene as they accomplish their initial investigative tasks, and then there'll be a preliminary report issued within 30 days. And I think the initial report will go a long way towards pointing what happened to this accident.
Okay, Peter Goals, thank you very much for joining us. Now, Kobe Bryant retired from the NBA in 2016. So as we go to break, I want to bring you the final moments of his last game where he electrified the home crowd there with a 60-point performance.
Will Kobe give them one last gamer? Bryant on the move with the jumper.
It's our breaking news. Kobe Bryant and his 13-year-old daughter killed in a helicopter crash. Kobe Bryant's last tweet, which was sent just yesterday, was to honor LeBron James after he passed Bryant to take over the third spot on the NBA's all-time scoring list. Kobe Bryant tweeted this: "Continuing to move the game forward. King James, much respect, my brother." And as LeBron James passed Kobe Bryant on that NBA all-time scoring list last night, he wore shoes honoring Bryant that said Mamba for life, a reference to Bryant's nickname there. James often talked about how much he looked up to Bryant. Here's what James said after last night's game.
In 2001, I believe I was playing in New Jersey, and the All-Star game, if I'm not mistaken, and y'all could correct me, was in Philly, right? Yeah, that Saturday, me and Maverick drove to the Intercontinental downtown Philadelphia, and he gave me a pair of his shoes, which I ended up wearing that following night. It was the red, white, and blue Kobe's. I was a 15, and he was a 14, and I wore them anyways. And I sat and just talked to him for a little bit. He gave me the shoes. I rocked them in the game. And it was the same night that we played Oak Hill against Melo. And then I saw what he was able to do the very next night, winning MVP here in Philly. Now I'm here in the Lakers uniform in Philadelphia, where he's from, where one of the first time I ever met him, gave me his shoes. He won All-Star Week. It's surreal. It doesn't make no sense, but the universe just puts things in your life, and when you live in the right way, or you just giving everything to whatever you're doing, things happen organically, and it's not supposed to make sense, but it just happens. I'm happy to be in any conversation with Kobe Bryant, one of the all-time greatest basketball players to ever play, one of the all-time greatest Lakers. The man got 2 jerseys hanging up in Staples Center. It's just crazy.
Again, those words from LeBron James just last night following his game. Now, if you've been with us this hour, you've learned a little bit more about Kobe Bryant and how when he was drafted, he had a side hustle of sorts. He was trying to break into rap music as well. Russell Howard was his producer, and Russell's joining us now. Russell, I know you have known Kobe since the two of you were in middle school in Pennsylvania. I can't imagine how you're feeling right now. How are you doing?
Oh, it's just so surreal, so tragic. Still obviously trying to process this, and just, we lost a legend, and just, I can't even imagine what his family is going through right now. So yeah, it's just, to wake up to this, it's been incredibly hard to process, and just to feel shook. So it's really sad, but yes.
A lot of people know about Kobe's record-breaking legacy, of course, as one of the NBA's greatest players. But what can you tell us about Kobe off the court?
I mean, so much, honestly. So Kobe and I was never really into basketball. I was always into making music. And so he and I shared a mutual admiration for music and a mutual bond over music, which I think was nice for him, because it gave him a break. Everyone else was talking to him about, basketball, et cetera, and he and I would just talk about rap lyrics and producers and favorite artists and stuff. And so, to make a long story short, when he was drafted by the Lakers, he knew that I was making music, and he was very passionate about music. He's very passionate about anything he put his mind to, very great at anything that he put his mind to. And so a rap group was formed, and he gave me a shot as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid. And I was flown out to L.A., and actually a group was formed, and we were signed by Columbia Records. And just to keep in mind, and this is why I wanted to take this phone call, he could have had access, he did have access to any producer in the world at that time, but he gave me a shot. Kobe had this incredible ability to see talent in people before they saw it in themselves. And he saw something, and I don't want to make this about me, but you asked, and so he gave a young 19-year-old kid a shot, and I was flown out here, and we started recording an album for a year and a half. And the amount of principles that I learned from him, the work ethic, I know everyone talks about that, but just the mere fact that, he would he would show up to the studio after practicing, after training, after interviews, and he would be the one most prepared out of all of us. And, he used to always tell me, Russell, you have talent, but if you don't put the work in, it won't matter. And it's just, I can honestly say I would not have the career that I have today without the doors that he opened. And that's
you say he changed your life.
He definitely opened doors that changed my life without a doubt. I was just a young, unknown producer, and through him and being in the studio with him, I was able to produce for very large acts and groups, and one of them was for Jay-Z, and that would have not happened if Kobe wouldn't have given me a shot. And yes, so by Kobe's generosity and belief, the doors were opened, and the course of my life and career changed. And I know you just spoke to my best friend and business partner, David Lastman, and the career that he and I have today in the music business was definitely inspired by Kobe opening doors for us. Absolutely.
Wow, sounds like he was an incredible friend and partner in many ways. Russell Howard, I really appreciate you taking the time to share your memories, your thoughts as we remember Kobe Bryant on this tragic day. And as we go to break, Shaquille O'Neal just reacted to the news today, tweeting, "There's no words to express the pain I'm going through with this tragedy of losing my niece, Gigi, and my brother, Kobe Bryant. I love you, and you will be missed. My condolences go out to the Bryant family and the families of the other passengers on board. I'm sick right now," he writes.